Marketing your own work shouldn't feel like it is killing your creativity, and if it does, you're doing it wrong. I recently hopped on a call with Robbie, the creator of a game called Enclave, whose latest Kickstarter was fully funded in just 2 hours and has brought in over $40,000 so far. And having played Enclave, a rules-light D&D style role-playing game that you can learn in just 10 minutes, it is an amazing game. It was easy to learn, fun to play, my friends and I had an absolute blast. Robbie is an incredible storyteller, but after our session, I looked up Robbie on socials and was surprised to find that he was not marketing Enclave basically at all. His YouTube channel, the only place where he really posts about Enclave online, was being treated like an afterthought, instead of like an opportunity to reach new players. So I shot him a DM, explained what I do for work, and told him, hey, if you ever want any marketing advice, just reach out. And he did, because behind the scenes, Robbie was struggling. He has spent a decade creating Enclave and has big ambitions for the game, but between running games professionally and being a father to his young kids, he wasn't able to attract new people into his community at the rate that he knew that he should be. He thought of marketing as a chore, a thing that took him out of his creative flow. So we sat down together and I tried to change his mind, to show him that attracting new customers, new players into his business could be something fun, rewarding, and creative. And we rebuilt his entire marketing strategy from scratch, from the ground up. And in the process, we completely reframed the way that he thinks about content creation. I think this conversation was amazing. I had an absolute blast. I hope that you enjoy watching it, and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thank you for joining me today, Robbie. I really love Enclave and the project in general. Like, I have played it myself. I think it's an awesome TTRPG, but there are a lot of TTRPGs in the industry. Of course, it's a pretty crowded space. What would you say is different about Enclave compared to what's already out there?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. I'd say a lot of Enclave's strengths are things that you got to experience firsthand. One, the fact that we are diceless allows us to get to the story part a lot faster than a lot of other games. Almost any good TTRPG can hook you in a story. Enclave just does it fast. To a similar end, we have a much more fast-paced gameplay than you'll find in a lot of others. You know, as you saw, we don't have to break for rolls. We don't have to break to check tables and all that garbage. And so it allows you to be doing things a lot more. Many people will report they will stop playing Enclave and then they'll be like sweating, like physically sweating after the session, even though they were just talking the whole time. Another big one is it's extremely easy to learn. Very fast to learn. You can learn while you play. It's easy to host the game. It's easy to set up sessions. It's just very minimal barrier to entry. You can learn more of the advanced stuff at your own pace. And I'd say another big one is in a similar direction to that. It's wildly easy to schedule. Since we play in one-shots with continuous characters, we have this great episodic structure. And in my experience, scheduling is what murders so many game groups and so many awesome long-form campaigns. And so even if you have like your group that you've played the same campaign with for 4 or 5, whatever years, on days when one person can't make it, just play Enclave instead. It's like a fill. And I think that's a good position to be in. There's a lot of other strengths Enclave has on top of those, but I'd say those are the most unique ones.
There are a couple keywords that I really want to point out here: how fast it is, how easy it is, the low barrier to entry. My gripe is that your YouTube channel does not reflect those keywords. Like the way that you are kind of marketing Enclave, it's like these 2-3 hour long videos that are not fast or easy to consume, so someone probably is not going to understand how fast and easy Enclave is to understand and get into as a system.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of trouble with YouTube content. The content I put out right now, I'll be honest, is just like treading water. It's there for like my already enfranchised community to be like, ooh, I want to see more full sessions of this game I already know and already like, but it's not been a good way to like hook new people in at all.
I think that you should consider leaning into short form content, actually. And I don't often say this. I'm a long form content kind of person.
People have told me this. I hate short form content, but I'm willing to try.
Here's the pitch. I think that there is absolutely room for this in the TTRPG space, especially because Enclave is fast and easy to learn. And I think that folks will get that message more. So I'm a big fan of allowing your marketing to feel very immersive, right? And to take the broader themes of your work or your product and allow that to play a part in everything that you do online, all of the content that you create. And that's why I'm saying maybe a short form content is a thing worth pursuing, because that would allow you to make content fast and easy, and folks would be able to understand how fast and easy, again, using those words all the time, Enclave is as a system. So I'm sure you're aware of Zach the Bold. Zach the Bold is, of course, like, he has long form content where he does do, like, 1 hour long plus videos, but he's obviously extremely well known for these shorts, where he does like these really fast skits, where it's just him playing all the characters. I would push you to not copy Zach the Bold, right? To do something that feels like Robbie and feels like Enclave, but to consider ways that, because you run the game regularly, you have all of these stories. Probably you have folks that maybe haven't played TTRPGs before, or people like me that haven't played Enclave before, that got into it really easily as a system. You could consider creating short form content that shows that. Like, for example, Deborah Ann Wool, who plays Karen Page on the Marvel TV show Daredevil, had this podcast interview with John Bernthal, who plays the Punisher. And Deborah Ann Wool is a big D&D person. John Bernthal, not so much, right? Like, he had like never really played before. But in this podcast, she pitched him on D&D as a concept. And he got into it basically immediately. It was a really cool clip to see. I'll put it in the video, but it was an amazing kind of experience, because Deborah was talking to John and she was like, I think that you would love D&D. I think it's perfect for you. You're an actor. You'd be like amazing at this. And he's like, well, I just don't know how it works. And she's like, okay, you're a ranger. You're in the woods. You hear a noise. What do you do? And it's immediately he gets into the character. He's like, oh, I take out my bow. Do I have a bow? And she's like, yeah, you have a bow. And he gets into it. And I would love for you to explore a thing like this for Enclave, of like taking someone that maybe is new to TTRPGs and being like, here's how you can get into this, and showing how the system is so easy to learn while you are playing it.
Totally. Okay, so I definitely hear that. Something I have been trying to do in the short form side is, when I was running my Kickstarter campaign, I ran a lot of video ads on Meta. I didn't put them on YouTube. And so I got a little bit of experience with doing short form editing, and they were okay, I'd say. And what I found is that there were a bunch of, like, how to describe this, like ad flavored ones that did pretty well in the grand scheme of things. Like, you could tell they're an ad, you know what they're trying to do, but they were all right. And I did try to put out like you could call it a Zach the Bold type skit that I was actually quite proud of. I think it was pretty good. But the thing I found is that I had a very hard time getting to the point within like 3 seconds. And from what I understand about shorts, if you don't like make the thing happen, if your thesis isn't 3 seconds long, it's not going to stick. And coming from a long form long form content person like myself, it's hard to get yourself into that mindset. And so I'm wondering, should I be doing more like ad-ish, like ad flavored short form, or is it something that I can try to bring more of myself to if I can get through that hump of getting the point across in 3 seconds?
Yeah. I think that you can be Robbie on camera and also hook someone in the first 3 seconds. And I think the way that you should do this is by asking a question, having that be the hook. So for example, as a DM, like, I don't know, having been a player in a session with you, you ask a lot of questions. You're like, okay, like, you hear footsteps coming down this hallway, like, you need to hide somewhere, what do you do? And that can be the hook. The same thing that you would say to a player, you can just say to yourself in a skit, or something like that, because then we, as a viewer, understand a little bit of the stakes and we already feel kind of immersive. It's almost like a podcast kind of short form format, right? Where, like, usually in a podcast style short form, reel or TikTok video, whatever, there is someone that is asking a question of someone else. And that question, as a viewer, we want to see the answer, but we're also thinking about the answer ourselves and what we would actually maybe say in that situation. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's a very good point. Another one could be, I don't know if this is contrite or has already been done, but assuming it would be somewhat original, actually have short form content that maybe is more of a playing into my strengths as a game host, where I can be narrating scenes, and I don't know, maybe let the comments decide. I don't know how shorts work. Is that something that shorts
Yeah,
do?
that would be interesting. I was actually talking to Gemma, our mutual friend Gemma, literally yesterday about different things that she could do to market her mini campaign that she just launched. And
She launched a mini campaign?
she did launch a mini
Well,
campaign.
since
Yeah,
frickin' when? I didn't know that.
I
Please
think it was
send it
like
my way.
in her most recent video. Yeah. Gemma and I talked about our kind of low lift ways that she could market this mini campaign while she's in the middle of like posting lots of YouTube videos and getting that stuff ready because she batches her content. And I brought up to her this idea of having on the community tab, you have polls, right?
Mhm.
And one thing that I think could be interesting that I don't see a lot of other creators exploring is almost a community decided or community driven small mini campaign or encounter where you have a question. The question is, what action are we taking, or is this character taking? And then you have, you know, two or three choices that you could make, and you drive that encounter. It's almost episodic in nature, like a series of polls that just decide the outcome of this particular interaction. Or even like, you know, you could stretch this on for ages and ages if you wanted to have it be truly episodic, and then consider having, you know, some kind of carousel post every week or 2 weeks that recap what has kind of happened so far in the adventure.
Okay. That's an interesting idea. It reminds me of Twitch Plays Pokemon, if you remember that way the heck
Yeah.
back in the day, which I was a huge fan of. I thought it was incredibly cool. And I've always kind of wondered whether something like that could be doable, because the fun thing about something like that for short form is that it would allow me to lean into my strengths. I think it would be reasonably engaging. If nothing else, could be kind of a, I don't know, maybe like a gem people could discover. Well, especially if you get a bunch of entries in, you're like, wow, this is like really developed. What did I miss? That sounds kind of fun as well.
Yeah.
And I think also, and this is, I know that this is kind of a cheaping out way of looking at it. It's a lot easier to make. It's
Yes.
much easier for me to do that,
Yeah.
especially in bulk.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that it's bad to think about what kind of easy content that you can create because you're a business owner, right? Like you have stuff that you are responsible for. You also have a family and you just finished this amazing Kickstarter campaign. Now you have to deliver that content to your customers. That's going to be a whole adventure in itself, right? And so
Oh
it
yeah.
makes sense to me to think about easy formats that you can use, of course. I almost wonder if going back to all of these recordings of campaigns that you already have, thinking about the keyword that we identified over here of this fast paced gameplay, do you think there are stories in all of those long form session recordings that you could use in short form content?
So I actually have done this on my YouTube, on the Enclave YouTube page. We do have some shorts where I actually like grabbed clips from some of those sessions, and
Yeah.
I turned them into short form content. The big thing I found with those is, one, I had to very much look to my community to be like, hey, what clips were your favorites? And even though there were some people who were very like diligent and helpful about that, it still meant that I would be like, okay, what's the timestamp? I don't remember the timestamp. Okay, let me go find the timestamp. Okay, now I have to download the video. Now I have to edit it up and get to that one little bit. Ugh, it would be like well over like an hour to up to 3 hours for one of these little guys, and it just didn't feel quite worth it for the amount of traction they got.
That makes sense. I wonder if you could add a channel to your community Discord server where you have like a quote slash funny moments channel.
We
I think
have
you
one,
already
yeah.
have this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do
You
have one.
encourage folks to have quotes and then even like drop a this happened at this time in this session to make things a little bit easier for you. But I agree that unless it was something that you outsource, probably it's a little bit too difficult to explore that at length. Maybe you could use those as inspiration for, I keep coming back to this concept of carousels and trying to do more with less. If you could maybe even consider compiling particularly like good quotes that you think are accessible and have a low barrier to entry as someone new to you in Enclave, that could be interesting to explore. The best performing carousels that I see right now, the ones that are most engaging, have a very short, ideally like no audio required video. To kind of stop the scrolling, get a little bit of engagement. This could be anything with slight animations to it. Like genuinely, it could be super, super easy.
You
Anything
can
that you
do
could
that
even
on a
keyframe
YouTube
in.
post?
Uh, That would be a GIF maybe for YouTube, but yes, you can have a series of GIFs as a
I didn't
carousel, I
know
believe, on
that.
YouTube. For meta ads, it's especially good because then you're making that ad even more engaging. So I would doubly recommend it for meta ads. I forget if GIFs are possible. GIFs are, I know for sure, are possible on YouTube. In a carousel post, I'm less sure of. I think they are, but I would have a little bit of movement in the beginning of that carousel and then have a
Yeah.
series of images after. You could even, again, turn any kind of educational content that you're making, shorts or YouTube videos about, into a carousel and have that be something that you're posting on Instagram, could be X, could be Threads, could be truly whatever platform that you feel like is best for you. But yeah, ads would be a great choice as well.
Yeah. So two quick questions in that regard. First of all, because I've heard a bunch of different philosophies on this, where I've heard some people say you need to have a massive presence on everything, blah 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 blah, and some
Yeah,
people are like, screw it, focus on like one or two.
yeah,
And the place that I've kind of come to is, obviously my hub is on Discord. That's where all of my community is. And I do call Discord a social media.
yeah.
And then YouTube has been my secondary. Do you strongly advocate for jumping onto other platforms, or do you think that having just a few that you very highly specialize in is good as well?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of specializing in, honestly, mostly one platform. So I am a YouTube first and YouTube only creator mostly. And I like to think about platforms kind of as like two, I don't know, two different categories, right? You have your discovery platform. This is where folks are finding you and your work for the very first time. It's where you want to
Mm,
optimize for eyeballs, basically. And
I
then
like that description. That's a good way of
yeah.
putting it.
And then you also have nurturing platforms, right? Where you're less focused on eyeballs and more focused on building a relationship with your prospective customer or your audience. And for you, it seems like Discord is absolutely your nurturing platform. It's where the games happen, it's where you're chatting with folks, it's where they're building community and designing custom classes, all that stuff. But I
Hmm.
would love for you to think about YouTube as your discovery platform where you are really focused on getting new eyeballs on your work, because right now it seems like YouTube is, like you were saying earlier, a nurturing platform in effect, right? And so I am somewhat
Yeah.
concerned that you have two nurturing platforms and there is no platform on which you are primarily really optimizing for new eyeballs. One thing that came up in Robbie and I's call was how important it was for him to have a central place, like a hub, for everything he does online. A place for folks to learn about Enclave, join his Discord, and even buy the game. And that's where Squarespace comes in, who are kindly sponsoring this video. I have been using Squarespace for years now, and honestly, it is one of the best choices I have ever made in my business. I have tried other services, but Squarespace has just always brought me back because they're so simple. I'm able to create landing pages in under an hour whenever I want. I can change the colors and the fonts on my site with just a couple of clicks, and everything actually looks good on mobile. Their mobile first design is incredible. And if you're not like me, if you don't want to be in the weeds, constantly adjusting things under like the last pixel, their award-winning templates are amazing. They are able to create incredible layouts basically instantly. All you have to do is replace the images with your own work, and it just works. It looks great. And their e-commerce features make selling anything online a breeze. They have amazing plugins for handling shipping and sales taxes. You are able to sell online courses, digital products, physical products, even schedule appointments, all within Squarespace. If you want to give it a try, go to squarespace.com/Kelsey Rodriguez and use my code Kelsey Rodriguez at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for their ongoing support of the channel for almost 3 years now. And now, let's get back to our conversation with Robbie.
Doubling up on nurturing platforms is, I just never would have thought to describe it that way. Okay, that's really helpful. And I think the other thing I wanted to ask in that regard, I'm sure I have a billion others, but just what's on my mind right now is,
Yeah.
you said that normally you would not recommend short form content.
Yeah.
What do you think makes it specifically good for Enclave, or is it just tying back into fast, easy? Fast, easy
It's tying
equals
back
short
into
form.
fast, easy for sure. I
Yeah.
also think that for storytelling based content, the value proposition is a little bit harder to package around. So thinking about YouTube titles and thumbnails for kind of long form content. With short form, you don't have to worry about packaging. The hook is what matters, right? And I feel like your strength as a DM is in your ability to hook people. and the strength of Enclave as a system is in how fast-paced the gameplay is, right? How immersive it is. And that lends itself, in my mind, really well to short form content. You also have the advantage of, frankly, it being really easy to batch film if you wanted. You could crank out probably half a dozen YouTube shorts in a day if you really put your mind to it, right? And
Oh yeah.
that's a whole different ballgame compared to how YouTube long form works.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something in that same direction that I'd love to ask about for a little bit of context. I do have experience being a YouTube creator. Outside of Enclave, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about history and video games. And it's not big, right? It's not substantial. It's about 2.5K subs. But most of my content that I do there is like what I'd call hyper long form content. It is edited,
Yeah.
but it's like half an hour to an hour long. And it's substantial. And so I have a very specific audience there, and it's given me not only it's given me experience with editing videos, which is great, but I've found that what success looks like in that content is probably going to be wildly different from what it might look like on this content, for example. So
Yeah.
do you have an idea of what sort of engagement metrics I should be looking for to determine whether or not what I'm doing is working? Because, for example, in my ultra long form stuff, that stuff is just like comment bait central. I get bajillions of comments on pretty much
Yeah.
everything I put out there, even if the views are in like the high hundreds to like 1,000, 2,000 range on average. But shorts, I have no idea what I'd be expecting, what I should be looking for. Do you have any insights in that regard?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, number one, I think that we should anchor it into probably signups to your Discord server. Like, probably that's where we
Ugh.
want folks to join to actually, that's essentially your email list, right? It's where folks are going to hear about Enclave news, they're going to actually play the game and get involved in the community. And you have a really great onboarding. Like when I joined your Discord server, someone DM'd me basically immediately. And I think that's a really great onboarding system. So I would try to always end that short form content with a call to action, either verbally or on screen or pinned to the comments, or I mean, hell, all three, where you invite someone to join that Discord server. And maybe you track those signups over time. And if you wanted to have some kind of link attribution software that's more advanced, where you link it back to individual shorts and figure out, okay, like what individual shorts are having the most signups, you can do something more advanced like that. But I think in the short term, at least, thinking about optimizing for Discord community signups is maybe the best approach for the moment.
Yeah, I think that that's a good metric, and I wouldn't have thought of it. My Kickstarter campaign is in late pledge season right now. My instinct would actually be to not even mention that and just to point towards the Discord, because I think it's a lot more attributable and it's a lot easier to track.
Yeah.
And I think it's vanishingly rare. I'm just going to happen to get someone who's like, okay, I'll click a link and pay you however much money on Kickstarter. Do
Yeah.
you think that's in the right direction?
I think that's right. Folks that are finding you on shorts, especially on a platform like YouTube, probably just want to play the game or learn more about the project. They might not be ready yet to pay you money. And hopefully you have, regular news posts going out where you talk about the Kickstarter, which I think that you do. So as something that's on your Discord, and that's being chatted about pretty actively. So I think probably someone is going to hear about it. If you were to continue to create long form content, and if you were to consider putting more effort into like kind of more polished videos where you maybe going back to the thing that we mentioned earlier, talking about how easy it is to get into TTRPGs and maybe creating intro content for folks that are very new to the whole game category in general, that is maybe a situation where I would recommend that you have call to actions for the Kickstarter, because Enclave is a solution to that undercurring problem, right? That underpinning problem. And that's probably more of an appropriate spot to mention the Kickstarter, but I totally agree that focusing on the Discord for short form is the way to go.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. In a similar direction to what you just said, my last big question that I'd have, though I'm sure you will prompt others, is to do with the long form content that I am currently doing.
Yeah.
Right now, the kind of like big unedited sessions that I upload, I've been kind of using the YouTube channel as like a repository for us to record cool stuff that we've done and for people who really enfranchise to go through and look at that. My question would be, do you reckon I should either stop doing that or maybe put them in a like unlisted playlist or something for the people who know so that it can like clean out the sub feed? One of the benefits that I found with these like big unedited monsters is that sometimes I've recently discovered the joy of the YouTube collaboration button.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I didn't really learn how cool it was, and I've met a bunch of great friends, like Gemma, for example. I met through YouTube,
Yep.
who have a YouTube audience, and when I put out one of these leviathans of them playing, I'll just say, "Hey, do you want a collab link?" And they usually say, "Sure." And so sometimes you get a couple of their watchers trickling in to just say like, "Oh, wow, this is just an unedited session of my favorite YouTuber playing this random game, but I never get to see them play." So do you think that that still could work for like sub box style content? And where do you think I
Yes.
should draw the line between um, recording and publishing these long form ones and keeping the sub box clean for other long form content? Hopefully that wasn't long winded.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I would be fairly selective if I were you about the 2 to 3 hour long videos, like how many that you're putting out. I would probably keep it to maybe just a couple uploads a month, if that. Maybe, balance it out with your other content. Probably I would make it no more than 30% of your long form uploads if I were you. Just trying to think about what would position you best long term for growth. You can also use the massive library of sessions that you already have as, again, another call to action or lead magnet for the Discord community. Like maybe you create a forum on Discord where it's okay, here are all of the session recordings that we have, and these aren't available publicly on YouTube, but you can only get them if you join the Discord. And you make that a read only forum, or sorry, yeah, a read only, view only forum for regular users. So it's just you and your team that can post in there. And then that becomes like just a massive library of awesome content and another compelling reason to join the community.
That's a really cool idea. In terms of other long form uh, main channel content, you, of course, mentioned very rightly the idea of doing some intro stuff. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. Um, I do have a video out there right now that was on my Kickstarter campaign of here's like I forget what the exact title is, like how to play Enclave in 6 minutes. And since Enclave is very easy to learn, having just one video that just summarizes all of it very fast felt appropriate. However, I could of course do videos going into more depth on certain of our cool, like, the game is actually quite mechanically deep. It's just you
Yeah.
don't have to care about that until you want to care about that. So I
Yeah.
could go more into depth in that regard, but do you think that would be a good idea? And do you think there are other long form content types, ideally in that, 10 to 20 minute sweet spot or whatever, 5 to 10 minute even, that you think I should be prioritizing?
Yeah. So I almost want you to think about your overall content strategy like you're a founder of any kind of startup. And for that kind of particular business model or industry, you do absolutely want to have videos that talk about the features of your product, that explain how to use it, of course. That should all be in a playlist. You should have that be a thing that you are talking about. So consider maybe YouTube is rolling out a course feature. You could have a little course of short videos explaining how to use
How
Enclave
does that
and
work? I'm so
maybe
sorry to interrupt you. I've never heard of this
yeah, it's
before.
like a different version of a playlist. It's a new thing that they're launching, basically where you can set, okay, this is the first video in this playlist that I want you to watch, and you kind of have a custom order like that.
Oh,
But it's like just a different flavor of a playlist. So I would
okay.
recommend that you
Awesome.
have a series of kind of short videos that explain how to use Enclave and have that live on your channel. Like you can customize the layout of your kind of channel page and have playlists appear like similar to how you already do, I think. Yeah, you have this. Yeah, just have a playlist of intro to Enclave just appearing on that kind of channel page, and that is part of your content strategy. But I think in general, I want you to create content that's not necessarily exclusively about Enclave, but about TTRPGs more in general to
Mm,
capture more of that broader audience. Because again, we want to optimize for eyeballs, right? A lot of folks don't know what Enclave is. We want to tell them, but we have to meet them where they're at, we have to create customer focused content that bonds with them over the interests they already have. That's probably TTRPGs, games in general. Consider creating commentary videos on your niche, even if you have a particular issue that you feel really compelled to speak about. Of course, if you include Brendan Lee Mulligan in any thumbnail, it's going to pop off, right? And you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But if you have moments where you're like, man, I want to talk about storytelling. Maybe I include Brendan Lee Mulligan as a storyteller in this particular video, or anyone in the space that has a little bit of that kind of face recognition. That could be advantageous for you. But even more so in general, think about videos that you could create where you can talk about how cool Enclave is. Maybe even, I don't know, consider a series of almost game dev style videos, right? Where you're talking about the different aspects of the game and how you've designed them to be easy and approachable. Like someone that I think is worthy of analysis that I personally am a little bit obsessed with is Lily S Illustrations. I'll pull up her channel really quick. I think Lily S is really cool and her videos are very fun. She's an illustrator, so I often bring
Yeah,
her
I
up
can
to
tell. Those are
folks in my
beautiful.
audience. Yeah, I often bring her up to folks in my audience who want to do world building projects and are visual artists. But a thing that's really cool that Lily does is she showcases her work, but specifically like the purpose of the project of it. So like I tried designing fantasy currency, for example. This small aspect of an overall world building project is made very compelling because it's just like, oh, yeah, we're just trying to do this and we're showcasing our work in this really fun way. I could imagine that as you build out these classes for Enclave and different campaign setting ideas that are pre made, you could create game dev videos essentially about these smaller projects and showcasing again how you're designing Enclave deliberately to be fast and easy. But also, I think that you mentioned this in our session, like the bits of Enclave that are out right now are only like 10% of the game that you have in your mind that you want to bring to fruition. And you can show how Enclave is both fast and easy and also a game with a lot of depth, like you said.
Okay, that makes a good amount of sense. In that direction, I had one other idea that I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on. I've hosted quite a few Enclave missions in the day, just a couple.
Yeah, just a few.
And I'm wondering where you see the value is potentially in doing videos going into lore, going into world building, going
Mm,
into retrospectives on past missions, because my inclination and the just from what I see of lore content isn't great for grabbing new people in a lot of cases, but it really is very sticky once you get interested in it and you want everything once you start going into it. So on the one hand, I'm not sure it would be great for the stated goal that we have of trying to cultivate a new audience. But on the other hand, it could mean that if I pivot into products in future that talk more about the game's lore, then
yeah.
I'm priming my current audience to be more interested in that. What do you think?
I actually think that world building content that delves into the lore of Enclave could be really interesting and very much an avenue worth pursuing. It goes back to the creator we mentioned earlier, Lily S. Illustrations, right? And how she was making that video on designing fantasy currency. And then she also has a video on creating a fantasy postal service and like lots of these various world building elements. There's this other creator that I want to share with you. I'm gonna have to. I forget exactly what this person's name is, but I do know that they have this video that went viral about designing fantasy maps. This video here, yeah, Nakari Speardane. Interesting. Okay, so this person creates lots of videos on world building. They do a
I
lot of like
already want to
anthropology.
watch everything on this channel.
Isn't it really cool? Yeah. They have a lot of like really cool linguistics, anthropology kind of flavored content, but they do have like fictional food philosophy as like, I don't know, a video on their channel. And it's like, yeah, what is that? I'm
Hmm.
curious, right? Like, what does it mean? And the design of their thumbnails makes it so approachable. It's like
Super
white
minimalist.
background, simple illustration. Yeah,
Yeah.
very minimalist, very like kind of just basic text, right? But it is very approachable. And then if we go back to, you know, someone like Lily S illustrations, um, we are like talking about the lore of this world and also kind of various world building elements to it, like the
Hmm.
undercurrent kind of design philosophy is happening here, but we're mostly talking about the lore. And I think that could be really interesting. But I want you to be careful about how you package it. Make sure that you're packaging
Mm.
it in a way that does not raise the barrier to entry to your work. Like you want to keep it low. So if you can think about, I don't know, different ways of phrasing certain world building elements that make it approachable, like fantasy postal service, fantasy currency, um, evil organization, like evil cabal, anything kind of like that, that puts it in words that make it accessible to someone that's new. That's what I would recommend.
Beautiful. No, that's great because frankly, lore and world building style content is probably the thing I would most enjoy making personally.
Yeah, and I think focusing on world building gives you some interesting opportunities because your audience is going to fall in love with the world. And then if you mention, oh, you can play in this world, you can tell your own stories in this world, that suddenly becomes a really, really interesting and compelling pitch for them, right? Like they fall in love with the world through your content, and now you're giving them an opportunity to have a part in it, to get to experience it. I think that seems really special.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a brilliant idea. Um, I somehow have exhausted all my immediate questions, but are there any
Perfect.
other specific topics you want to spin out on?
That seems good. No, we've been talking for about an hour.
Yeah,
So I mean, it seems like we had a really productive talk today, and I'm super excited to see what Enclave does in the future.
marvelous. I'm really grateful for you taking the time, and even more grateful, frankly, for your interest in the game. It
Yeah.
does mean a lot. Yeah, I hope that this has been an interesting case analysis for you and possibly other people to learn from.
Thank you so much for watching my conversation with Robbie. Truly, I cannot wait to see where he takes Enclave from here. And if you want my help growing your business, consider joining my paid program and also watching a video on the screen right now. I will see you there. Bye.